I will never forget it as long as I live. However this ends, with less than 60 seconds remaining, these two men have given everything that there is to give. Not only that they have to give, but there is to give to the sport of professional wrestling. They have pounded, they have hammered, they have clawed, they have dug, they have put on every hold that they know, every weapon at their command as we're in the final 30 seconds of this match.
Welcome to Last Match Standing, the podcast where we review, relive, and rank the 100 greatest wrestling matches of all time. As always, I'm Spencer.
I'm Ron Trongard.
And I'm Gary DeRusha.
And today we are coming to you from November the 15th, 1986, from the Showboat Hotel and Casino Sports Pavilion in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we have an AWA World Heavyweight Championship match between Nick Bockwinkel and Curt Hennig.
Better than perfect.
So much better than perfect. I mean, this match is iconic. I mean, a lot of people consider this to be most likely the greatest AWA contest ever, and maybe even in the top 5 greatest matches of all time. So I'm really interested to see where we're going to drop this one.
This is a match that played on an episode of ESPN Championship Wrestling in obviously 1986, a little bit after it aired. I think the week after the match actually took place.
I think it aired on the 21st of November.
Yeah, and it did good numbers. This was a good match and a great time. So, guys, I am so pumped to get it underway. But before we do that, I do have something that we do every week.
Oh, yeah? Do we have a corrections corner?
Yeah, that's right. And it's time for a little bit of a correction corner.
No, I know what this is going to be.
And it's coming from Podcast Hitman. It's been a minute since we've talked about it. But I feel like Podcast Hitman reached out to us, and he had 2 corrections for us. And he did say to shame Paul.
Shame.
Do you know what I'm referring to?
Shame.
He says...
It looks like he does.
Shame.
Says 2 things. This is in response to the War Games episode just a couple episodes ago. He says, Rock Hogan did happen a second time at No Way Out 2003, because we said it happened only once. So that's interesting. I don't remember that match at all. And then the second thing he says War Games started 5-on-5, Horsemen and JJ versus Superpowers, Road Warriors, and Paul Ellering.
You know, Paul, you went into this saying you knew everything about War Games.
Well, you see, here's the thing. When you watch War Games documentaries, they don't talk about J.J. Dillon or Paul Ellering being involved. They talk about Horsemen versus like Sting, Dusty Rhodes, and the Road Warriors.
Well, maybe before saying you know everything about War Games, watch all the War Games matches instead of watching a documentary. Moving on.
Podcast Hitman, thanks. We appreciate it. And now that that's out of the way, let's get to 1986.
We got youth versus experience. The veteran champion versus the young contender. We have champion Nick Bockwinkel versus newcomer Curt Hennig for the AWA heavyweight title. And this contest will be a 60-minute time limit.
That's pretty good, Paul.
I practice.
I like that.
AWA. Guys, have y'all ever seen an AWA match before this one?
I've now seen 4 of these. But
Yeah, because we watched 3 of them together.
that's right.
Yeah, so there was sort of there are a lot of really great matches between Hennig and Bockwinkel. And so...
Oh, we know.
We
watched them all.
And we've been recommended a series of them. So we decided to go ahead and watch all of them and pick the one that we think should end up on the list first, if not the only one to end up on the list. We'll see. And we thought this one, for many reasons, was just the best of the bunch and definitely deserves a spot on the list without question. American Wrestling Association. AWA was a promotion based out of Minneapolis, which can be traced back actually to Anton Stetcher and his Minneapolis Boxing and Wrestling Club back in 1933. Ooh. Stetcher would then become a founding member of the NWA in 1948, and the club would eventually evolve into an NWA territory. The most popular star of this territory was the legendary Vern Gagne. And despite all of his success, Gagne was time and again denied the chance to challenge NWA champion Pat O'Connor. This prompted Gagne and a few other promoters to form AWA out of the previously existing NWA territories in the Minneapolis area. So AWA then dubbed Pat O'Connor the inaugural AWA champion, giving him 90 days to defend the AWA championship against Vern Gagne. This was literally just a ruse to get the match between Pat O'Connor. It's genius if you think about it. But the NWA and O'Connor ignored the challenge, and O'Connor was stripped of the title, and the AWA championship inaugurally was awarded to Gagne in August of 1960. Pretty clever politicking going on in Minneapolis here.
Man, that worked out well.
I think so. Vern Gagne. Gagne ran the AWA, essentially, with the firm belief that the Olympic-style technical wrestling should be the basis of any pro wrestling organization. And it shows.
Oh, yeah, that's what they did. That's what they were known for.
The promotion would go on to be one of the most successful wrestling territories in North America, promoting shows from Chicago to Houston and even in Canada.
Yep.
After Gagne retired from the ring in 1981, the AWA put their money on Nick Bockwinkel to be the face of the promotion. He would go on to have countless matches and rivals that defined his generation, including the match that many say launched the career of Hulk Hogan in 1983. Due to Vince McMahon's expansion of the WWF in the mid-'80s, AWA forged an alliance once again with NWA, forming the short-lived Pro Wrestling USA. It was during this tumultuous time that Bockwinkel's career was coming to a close, and the AWA were on the lookout for the next face of the organization.
Did you know that whenever Hulk Hogan left, Vern Gagne offered Iron Sheik $10,000 to break Hulk Hogan's leg?
No.
Yeah, and he wouldn't do it.
Dude, I love Sheiky Baby.
He wouldn't do it.
So good. So when AWA was on the lookout for the guy to replace Nick Bockwinkel in Secession, guess who they found?
Are you referring to the son of Larry Hennig?
It very well could have been the son of Larry the Axe Hennig, who also made a name for himself in AWA. Yeah. Curt Hennig grew up a second-generation wrestler, as many know, son of Larry the Axe. And you may not know, Hennig was a childhood friend of ravishing Rick Rude. They attended Robbinsdale High School in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, alongside Tom Zink, Nikita Koloff, Road Warrior Hawk, and Barry Darsow, a.k.a. Spencer's favorite, the Repo Man. Woo! Curt started his career in AWA in 1980 to pay homage to the promotion that made his father a wrestling legend. While there, he won the tag team championship with none other than Scott Hall. He would go on to gain experience outside the AWA before returning in 1983 to begin the build to become the organization's next top star, a path which led him straight to Nick Bockwinkel on November 21st, 1986.
Man.
So I think the main thing to talk about is this match is after the Wrestle Rock Rumble.
I think that's
where
important to
Bockwinkel
note.
got his belt back from that humanoid Hanson.
He sure did.
Thank you for clarifying that, Paul. I do want to say that this is a match at this point in their lives. Curt Hennig is 28 years old. Nick Bockwinkel, 51.
He does not look 51.
No, he doesn't look 51. Partially because he's got a great head of hair.
The way he moves.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't move like a 50-year-old man. He moves like a guy in his 30s.
No, you definitely don't think watching this match that he is Hennig Sr. by 23 years.
Yeah, he's almost double his age.
It's a little bit insane when you think about it, like how good he moves. And part of that is because of the style of match that they're able to wrestle. But man, all the credit in the world to Nick Bockwinkel for still being this damn good at 51 years old.
There's a reason why that older generation all wrestled into their 60s, because they did that Olympic style, and it's got a lot less impact than the way guys wrestle today. It's like you look at Taker at 55 and like, please, like you can barely walk. Please stop.
I mean, this match is a wild ride.
It really is.
It's raw, hard-hitting, intelligent pro wrestling.
Well, and I think that last word that you use really sums it up, because I think when you said in the jump that this is a top 5 wrestling match of all time, potentially, I think it's because the people that like this match are the ones that look for that intelligent wrestling, and it's based off of that Olympic style, right?
Oh yeah, and that's like what these two were known for.
Yeah, and so they put on a literal clinic in front of you as far as what is professional wrestling. You know, what is it from the basic, like the base of professional wrestling? What is it supposed to look like? These guys show you, and then they take it up another level, and I'm excited to break it down.
And I love the way they do this. They wrestle so smart. And I mean, like this is what, the second 60-minute match we have on the? No, it's the third.
Spoilers.
It's the third 60-minute match we have on the show.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Because was Cena Michaels technically 60 minutes?
I think you could watch like almost 50 minutes of that match, but I think if you count in the commercial breaks, they went 60 minutes. But Okada Omega went just over 60 minutes.
True.
Yeah, an hour and 4, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I'm not counting the Royal Rumble because it's not a one-on-one match, but that one is over an hour. But the Punk Samoa Joe match is 60 minutes.
Absolutely.
And they do a similar. They tell a very different story than Punk and Joe, but
Definitely.
they build their match a similar way where they're like, look, we have an hour. We cannot start at full speed. We have to work our way up. And I'm sure some people out there, well, how come they start so slow? I'm like, they've got an hour. If they, like, it's a 51-year-old man. Yeah, he's in great shape and he can move, but he cannot go for 60 minutes at this high-paced speed.
So I think we would be remiss not to mention that this does end up becoming somewhat of a divisive match, because you are going to have the critics that don't like watching these longer, drawn-out build of matches where you do have 60 minutes. And so are there rest holds? Absolutely.
Well, there has to be.
But just because someone's in a rest hold doesn't mean they're not being creative in what they're doing and doing something in an interesting and intelligent way. And Nick Bockwinkel is one of the absolute best grapplers to ever do it.
That man knew how to do a rest hold and, like, keep it interesting. There's a couple points in this match where he's got Curt in like a single leg crab, but he's not just holding that crab. He's like twisting the ankle. At one point, he like stands up straight and just starts twisting that ankle. Then he slams Kurt's knee down and starts grinding it on the mat. And I'm like, it's like a 2 or 3 minute rest hold, but like because he's constantly working Kurt's leg or working
he's finding
his back,
new and creative ways to torture his opponent.
At one point,
it's so good.
At one point, he fixes his hair while he's got Curt in like an ankle lock, and then he just wrenches back, like rolls him over, and then puts him into a different hold. I'm like, I bet Curt Angle watched a lot of Nick Bockwinkel matches because he did the same thing. Curt would like lock a holder, and he would just like move it around and change things up.
Yep.
So if they have to
Constantly.
if they have to breathe or talk, they would find ways to do it. And I think I watched this match 3 times. I never once caught either of these guys talking to each other.
Right. No, it's like they were actually, it comes off as a shoot, which is sort of the way AWA intended their matches to come across. I mean, it was on ESPN for God's sake. So this is, as you guys were talking about, this is old generation versus new generation. Hennig is coming in to take over. This is a torch passing kind of situation. I would compare this match to a match that came a little bit later in the world of pro wrestling, to a Ric Flair versus Sting in the early 90s. It sort of has that flavor to it for me.
Yeah. And it's similar age difference as well.
Gary DeRusha, our referee.
He's the referee, and on commentary, we've got Lord Paul. Sorry, apologies. It's actually Lord James Blears and Ron Trongard.
So here's the thing about this match. I was like, oh shit, I gotta look at the commentators. And then at one point early on in the match, you see voice of Ron Trongard going, yes, and Nick Bockwinkel, champion of AWA. And then like he's just talking this thing. He said, this is gonna be the veteran champion against the young contender. And then like you hear somebody else talking, like, what is he saying? And then he says, and I quote, and remember kids, Don't emulate the pros at home. Learn amateur wrestling, and when you get a little bit older, then you become a professional. And it says, voice of Lord James Blears. And I'm like, okay. No research required. Just watch the match.
Yeah, thanks so much for making it easy on us.
And I think that's like the ESPN thing, because they do that like when you're watching like Monday or Friday or Sunday football. It just says at the bottom like voice of, I don't know, Dick Ebersol. I mean, he never called a football game, but my point is, it will say he'll tell you who's calling you the game,
which is good to know. I
like
absolutely
agree.
agree.
I like knowing who my commentators are. I like knowing who my official is. I want to be told this match will be officiated. I like knowing that.
Yeah, by Brad. What was his name?
Gary DeRusha?
Gary DeRusha?
The referee?
No, our guy who is the commentator.
Ian Bradley?
Ian Bradley. Yeah, just like Ian Bradley. Right.
Man, underrated. Underrated Ian Bradley.
You guys really, I'm going to get a dog and name it Ian Bradley.
Hell yeah.
That's to happen.
And we're going to get it, but like, I'm not going to tell my neighbors. I'm not even going to tell anybody. I'm just gonna, the fans will get it.
I'm going to Halloween this year as Ian Bradley.
Hell yeah.
And guess what? I can do whatever the hell I want. No one knows if it can tell me any different.
Anybody that watched the chokeslam punishment match, video, will know exactly what I'm doing for Halloween. That's right. I'll be a very specific version of Macho Man Randy Savage.
Okay, so I know that we said that the match starts slow, but I think there is something that happens before it really settles in.
Well, they go to shake hands, and Hennig turns to go to his corner, and Bach is just like, all right, you're going to turn your back to me. Here we go. Drop kick off the bat.
So I can't really think of a lot of matches that tell me quicker who's the face and who's the heel.
Yeah.
That's it.
Black hat, white hat, gentlemen. But one thing, like you said, we start with a drop kick, which is like, whoa, that's a big deal in 86 especially.
Well, and do you feel like here there's a sense of desperation mode? Because why would he do that? Why would he feel
Bach would do that?
Is he threatened by the younger guy?
I think so.
To try and get the early advantage here.
Hennig's just under like half of his age, and he's like, I got to put him away early.
And I think that's a story they tell throughout the match. And so to start from there, I think is really interesting. And it sets up for basically, a good story to sort of follow throughout the course of the match.
One thing I really like about it is, so Nick kind of gets that early advantage, and he just keeps Curt grounded. He does not give him a chance to catch himself. So they'll they rotate holds, but so he gets a lot of side headlock, a lot of headlock takedowns. But when he does them, they look so stiff.
Oh, I mean, Hennig is absolutely unable to escape the side headlock in the early match. It's really great. At one point, he wraps his arms around Bach while still locked in the headlock and just rotates around, which just looks so uncomfortable.
It really does.
Yeah, and I think what adds to the side headlocks, I know we're kind of gushing over a headlock, right? But what adds to it, and this is the second time we've talked about it on our list, the commentators break down the headlock.
Yeah.
They do, and I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, they make it look and sound like it's really painful. And if you're delivering it the way Bockwinkel does, it absolutely is.
Like I said, whenever he's like pulling Curt over for that takedown, like he's not like, all right, I'm gonna twist and you're basically gonna do a front run. No, I'm pulling you the fuck down. I'm slamming you on the mat, and then I'm gonna grind my forearm under your forehead.
And
Like,
Hennig does not escape the headlock
No,
until
he
gets to the ropes. That is the only way he's able to get out of it. And that's just something you don't see.
No. Like
Not for a headlock.
Yeah, they put it over.
I do want to say something that I appreciated, and again, this speaks to sort of the production team, and maybe with it being on ESPN or maybe it being 1986, I'm not sure, but they call out the name of every cameraman.
I like that too.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
It was it was Lord James Blears that was like, big thank you to our cameramen. They're doing a great job on the floor, and it's these four guys on the cameras and this guy that's our producer, and I was just like, okay,
You know what else?
I appreciate that.
You know what also that invokes? That invokes like actual athletic contests.
Yep.
They'll do that. They'll give a shout out to our production team. We've got Phil and we've got Brad on the spotlights tonight. We've got Peter, we've got Tom, and we've got fucking Gary doing the camera work.
Right, and
No,
the working,
Gary's the referee in the ring.
God damn it.
There's two Garys.
You know how hard it is to come up with like
two Garys. Two Garys.
You know how hard it is to just pick 9 random names out of a hat and not
There's always
use like
2
ours?
Garys.
I'm trying not to say Nick or Curt.
You,
or
you got Spencer, Paul, and Landon working the working the cameras.
I'm trying not to use our names or like anybody involved in the match. I'm like, I got to come up with like 9 people and not mention anybody named Nick, Curt, Ron, James, Paul, Spencer, or Landon. Like that's 9 fucking names right there.
I know everyone's name Landon.
The name game. I do just think ultimately it does, to kind of Paul, to your point, bring together this. We're working hard to present to you this legitimate sport.
Yeah, and it comes off that way. And if you didn't know that pro wrestling was a work and you watch this, you're like, it's real. Because that's like when I watch boxing, that's how they present boxing.
After he was able to create some space, Hennig quickens the pace here and goes to work on the arm of Bockwinkel. Did you notice Curt's knee placement when he locks in the arm bar after his takedown? It's one fluid motion. Bach goes running on the ropes. Curt slips the arm for the takedown and slides right into the arm bar and drops his knee on Bach's head in one fluid motion.
I did catch that.
Perfect.
It was kind of scary, actually.
It's around this point where James Bleer says to Trongard, he says, "Do you think you're ready to go 60 minutes?" And Trongard says, "No, I don't think it'll do that long. Like, I don't think it's going to be that long." And boy, were they in for something special.
Well, I mean, just as precise, Nick Bockwinkel, as if there are 2 Bockwinkels.
Nick!
Just as precise, Nick Bockwinkel's efforts on the leg of Curt Hennig. Dear God. I mean, Paul sort of hinted at it before. When Bach gets going on Hennig, it's just scary. We got Indian deathlocks. We've got leg vices. I mean, at one point, he's got his leg wrapped around Curt like in a figure 4-esque and just moves that joint and is rolling the joint, grinding it into the mat. Ugh. I mean, he applies pressure everywhere.
And I think what I appreciated about it is the way he tries to keep control of other parts of Hennig's body to prevent him from reversing. So, for instance, when Bockwinkel has Hennig in the, that sort of ankle wrench, so to speak, he's sure to be stepping on Hennig's other ankle. So he can't kick at him. He can't push him off. He's just stuck with his back on the mat looking at Bockwinkel, tearing his knee apart, basically.
Oh, yeah. One moment I really enjoyed, Curt gets like a head scissors and he pulls Bockwinkel down, and Nick does a somersault to get out of it. When's the last time you saw somebody do that?
Not very often.
And this is like, what, 33 years ago? 34 years ago.
But the best part is, after taking all this damage, Curt is able to rotate his body to get some strikes in, forcing Bach to break the hold. But as Curt gets up, he can't put weight on his left leg.
No, he cannot.
And so while he tries to like drop the knee on Bach's arm, right? He's gonna laser in on Bach's arm. That sort of was his game plan early match. And he goes to drop the knee, and he damages probably himself more than the arm of Bockwinkel.
There is one exchange I really, really enjoyed. So you mentioned that the pace kind of picks up for these great moments. So there's a point where they basically trade scoop slams, and then there's some beautiful drop kicks by both men, and then Curt does this gorgeous hip toss, and that's actually what leads into the armbar you're talking about. And I'm like, I just wanted to mention that because they go from these kind of slow, methodical paces to these really big, like minute long, like oh my God, look at this, like, and it's something that you probably didn't see a lot back in the 80s.
No, this is classic pacing. Like, this is building up to one of the, I think we all agree, one of the best finishes that we've had on our list.
Well, I was gonna say, like, that exchange they have, that's how you build to a finish. And that's like maybe 10 minutes into this hour-long match. So the fans are getting excited because, oh, here we go, big finish. Oh, no, they're still going.
And then they slow it back down.
And they do this several times where they keep building up to the finish of the match, and then it doesn't happen, or there's a really big moment. Like when we get the Indian deathlock that you were saying, or whenever Nick starts just punishing the knee, like surely Curt's going to tap out, or Curt gets these really big flashy moves and he's got a pin coming. Oh, this is it. We're a new champion. Like, no. Like, wait, because they're still going. They're going to keep building up like this.
It kind of reminds me of watching a season of television.
Yeah.
Right. So, you've got the episodes and they're telling you the important stuff throughout the episode, but they're going to get you with that cliffhanger to keep you watching.
That
Right.
cliffhanger happens like 5 times. In this
Exactly.
match.
And so it's like each episode is ending, building towards the season finale, so to speak, at the end. And so it paces itself really well.
And what I really like about it is a lot of times when people do that in a match, you kind of get like, all right, get to the point. Like, I never really got that vibe. Even the second and third watch through, I'm like, okay, because it builds. And they never slow it down so much that they lose the steam.
Right.
Because this crowd is really into this match. And it really shows when we do get to the ending. We're not there yet, but when we do get there, they come unglued because they're like, oh my God, because they just keep building.
Another thing that really helps this match stay sort of at the peak performance level the entire time, even when we're in the slower parts of the match, are the announcers. Oh my God.
They keep you engaged.
So at one point, they channel John Cena. Never give up in whatever you do.
Oh, yeah. Listen, that's to be fair, they're not necessarily always talking about the match in the ring, right?
Well, no.
Yeah,
but that's
James
okay.
But they have
Clears.
60 minutes to work with, and so
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with it.
I am
And
too.
I believe the exact quote I have written down is, and don't you youngsters forget, never give up, not in wrestling or in anything you do in life.
So good.
I was feeling very inspired.
I wasn't expecting that.
And just in case you guys didn't know, Tronga reminds us, guys, AWA is the major league of wrestling.
Sell it.
Oh, I've got like 10 more quotes. So we get a crisscross. That's our new streak, by the way, crisscross.
Hell yeah.
And I'm like, crisscross? Okay, we are in the 80s. I do enjoy Nick tries for another headlock, but Curt just kind of reasserts his dominance. He turns it into a hammerlock, and then he gets the chicken wing. And he still has Nick in the chicken wing, and rolls him into a pin while still have both of the arms trapped. And I'm like, that's interesting, because if you actually did it to somebody, they ain't breaking that hold.
I think as we sort of reach one of our first peaks in the match, we have this moment where Bockwinkel uses the tights. Yeah, he grabs on Hennig's tights and is able to get out of the ring. And so we have our first moment where we sort of break ourselves from this pace in the ring, and they go to the outside. And I think what's really interesting is that it's like we're bridging the gap between different chapters in the series, right? And so first time we're out of the ring, and they find ways to make it very interesting when they're out there.
But what I like about what you mentioned there is that Nick uses the tights. And I'm like, okay, so Nick blinked first. He knew he couldn't beat Curt straight up. So like, all right, I have to cheat to beat him. And that's when they go out. They go to the outside. I was like, all right, I'm gonna smash him into the turnbuckle. I'm gonna use the barricade to my advantage. I'm gonna use everything I can to beat this youngster. And what I really enjoyed about that is when they get back into the ring, Nick goes for like a shoulder block and he misses and smashes his left shoulder into the corner. And that's when Curt really starts working that left arm, and he just starts thrashing at the shoulder. And there's this kind of great moments like, there we go. Okay, the age of Nick, he can't take that kind of thrashing to the arm.
Well, this is about the halfway point of the match.
Yeah.
And when Bockwinkel does get back on the offensive, he locks in another hold, and Curt quickly finds the ropes. I feel like you get the impression here that these guys are starting to understand we've taken some damage, and we need to start being way more careful.
Oh, yeah.
And so finding the ropes quickly, Bach just starts kneeing Hennig to the point where Hennig rolls out and hits the floor. Gary, the referee, enforces his count, prompting Hennig to get back in the ring, falling right into the arms of Bockwinkel for a sleeper hold.
Oh, yeah. And they call it the Bockwinkel sleeper hold. There's one moment I really enjoyed. Nick does 2 back-to-back gorgeous, like super high angle, like delayed scoop slams, and it makes him look really painful. Something that reminded me a lot of the Rollerball Rocco match, because he does the same thing in that match where he does these 2 really big, like, "Rah!" and then slams them down hard, and then does it again immediately. It looks so painful.
Well, I think, Landon, at the beginning of the match, you said that maybe Bockwinkel is uncertain about his ability to beat Hennig. And Paul, you referenced it when he uses the tights, right? Like he's the first one to blink. Well, I think that it also continues in the way that Bockwinkel's putting these submission holds on, right? So he does this Indian deathlock, and it's not just an Indian deathlock because he's going to start striking Hennig in the face with these brutal forearms.
Like he goes for like the high angle single leg Boston crab where he does the ankle lock, and then he turns that into a clover leaf.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude. And this is the only part of the match where I'm like, okay, this is going a little too long because he kind of locks in a toe hold, and that toe hold is on there for a long time. It's the only point of the match. I'm like, guys, come on, you've been in this hold for too long. I believe this is the point where he starts grinding that knee because I think he knew this is going on too long. I need to change things up.
Well, Hennig does get back into the ring right after he's out there and the ref is doing his count. He does get into that sleeper hold, and at this point, things look pretty dire for Curt. But how does he get out of that sleeper hold?
Out of desperation, Hennig bolts for the ropes, taking out all three of them.
Yeah.
Yes, including Gary.
Poor Gary.
He does a very Bret Hart, like, I'm on this hold. I'm just going to throw you out. You're still holding on me. Oh, shit, we're going. Gary, you're coming with us. Oh, God.
Good thing there's a second Gary.
They all spill into the floor because there's always two Garys. Hennig makes it back to the ring first, runs Bach on the ropes, and chops him down. And oh, my God, this chop.
Ooh.
It was beautiful. I swear I heard some woos.
It probably did.
Hennig takes this opening to find new and creative ways to injure Bach's arm. He pulls it over the top and drops to the floor, puts in a hammer lock, just pounds on it.
Yeah, he wraps it around the post. He wraps it around the ring post.
But the veteran always finds a way to create some separation. Bach goes for that spinning toe hold that Paul was referencing. Hennig, now wise to it, rolls him through. And as this is going on, you see at this point, they're just kind of trading. And this is where it really becomes an intelligent match, right? Because they're trading reversals. And they're like, okay, if you're going to do this move, you did that 3 minutes ago. Now I know how to get out of it.
Oh, exactly.
And so the commentary team is comparing this match to Vern Gagne versus Lou Thez.
From like 30 years earlier.
Man, if you're wrestling a match and that's what people are saying in the middle of it,
that's a pretty big compliment.
Doing all right.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I do enjoy it because at one point, Curt does a flying crossbody. I'm like,
Yes.
way!
Out of nowhere.
So good. So good.
And it almost gets the win.
Yeah, and there's a point where Nick goes for another scoop slam, but then Curt reverses it and like punches he goes right after Nick's leg, and he locks in a short arm scissors.
Yeah.
Going right back to that arm. And I'm like, what year is this?
And it's about this time where Nick Bockwinkel starts asking the timekeeper on a regular basis, how much time is left? How much time is left? I love it because it's telling the story that Bockwinkel's getting worried here.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time he calls for time, we're only 37 minutes in.
Yeah. And then the timekeeper starts making big announcements after every kind of like milestone moment. And Nick does a pile driver, a very scary but very safe pile driver. Curt gets his foot on the bottom rope.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and you felt like if you're watching this match and you're rooting for Hennig or you're desperately hoping that Bockwinkel holds on, you're thinking maybe that was Bockwinkel's last shot.
Yes. And to quote Trongard, I'm at a loss for words.
But he gets more desperate, Bockwinkel does, right? So Bockwinkel ends up putting this leg lock on Hennig now that he's dragged him away from the ropes, but he's using the ropes as leverage because his back is to Gary DeRusha.
And I love that because while that's going on, the timekeeper announced 45 minutes have expired. And I'm like, are they going to tell us that every like 10 minutes? And they do.
Right.
Actually.
And so it's about 45 minutes in where Curt, he makes a big mistake in my mind. Curt decides to change his game plan in the middle of the match and starts working over Bach's leg. This is completely changing his strategy. And that's a huge risk. You've been working his arm this whole match. And you're just abandoning the strategy that's worked for the most part. And what it does is it gives the champion a chance for his arm to recover so that he can do more of these holds. So Bach is able to get Hennig up for a power slam. But Hennig, still athletic, still really versatile, is able to roll through and get a small package for a 2 count.
Awesome.
It looks really good.
It was really cool.
2.99, right?
Like Paul said, Bach gets that pile driver on Hennig. Positioning does him in here. Gets to the bottom rope. I love the coverage of this moment from the commentary team because Hennig's leg movement to the rope at this point was so subtle. And they literally say, well, thank God he was wearing those white boots. Otherwise, the ref would have missed that.
Because I didn't even notice it. I thought he kicked out. I'm like, that was a very like soft, like, how he kicked out? Like, oh no, he got his foot in the rope. And
right.
Talk about
but it was like literally, it was such a small little move. I mean, good detail from the commentary team.
Boots.
The white boots.
Man, that gives me chills almost. It's so good.
And now Hennig again, changing his course of attack, locks in a surfboard stretch.
Ooh.
Why does the ref pull Bach's arm off the bottom rope as he reaches for it? Did y'all notice this?
I did not notice that.
Yeah, so he's in the surfboard, and Bach is reaching out for the ropes, and as the first few times he touches the ropes, Gary shoves his arm off. And I'm like...
Do you think it's because when he caught him using the rope as leverage earlier?
I don't know. It was confusing to me, but Bach does inch close enough to the ropes where he can reach his arm all the way around, and that forces Gary to break the hold.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess like just putting your fingers on the ropes is against the rules. You have to grab them.
I do like this because we get some of the hardest chops ever by Curt, and they're so loud. The echo when he's chopping Nick is like, it evokes like watching Ring of Honor matches or watching matches from New Japan. They're just chopping the fuck out of each other.
Oh, yeah. The strikes here were crazy considering what we've seen as a technical masterpiece, working the arms and the legs throughout the whole match.
But doesn't it speak to maybe the desperation as we're now 40-plus minutes into the match?
Yeah.
Like, you have to pull out something else.
And so to even things up, Curt does a pile driver of his own.
He does.
But Nick gets the bottom rope this time.
And I love how mirrored those moments were.
Perfectly mirrored.
And I kind of like how Nick's response to that is to do a really high angle, like delayed backplex, like he picks him and holds him there for a second and then like twists his whole body as he brings him down. And I point out that's actually closer to like a teardrop than it is to a backplex. I was like, okay.
It was beautiful.
Oh, it was great. And then Ron goes, "This is too much." And then James goes, "It is indeed too much."
Bach sells the Hennig drop kick like death.
Yeah, he does.
I literally thought he had a heart attack and died right there in the middle of the ring.
Drop kick. Where do they find it? Where do they find the resiliency?
As Hennig goes for a stepping toe hold at this point, which is something that Bach has shown that, this is his move, he's pushed off and launched into the post. And it's at this point where Hennig is busted open.
Oh, and it looks nasty.
We are just under 10 minutes to go here towards that 60-minute time limit, and this is where the match changes and starts to create one of the more memorable finishes on our list.
Oh, Hennig just turns it on at this point. He's tasting his blood. I don't even think he was able to see, but he runs Bach into the ropes and smashes him in the head with the axe.
Oh, he gets the axe.
The brutal forearm a la Larry the Axe.
Yeah, and then he does it again. And then now we see that Nick is busted open.
How great is that? I mean, how do you sell that axe better than it's going to bust Bockwinkel open?
Well, I love is then he hits it again, but Nick falls on his stomach. And Curt, he literally goes for the pin. Like, you can't pin him on his stomach. And then he's struggling.
What a moment.
He's struggling to roll him over. There are 3 minutes remaining. And he's struggling to roll Nick over because he knows he can beat him.
Well, this is so interesting because Hennig, sort of once he gets that taste of his own blood, it almost like a flip switches. And he's now more interested in inflicting damage than winning the championship.
Yeah.
Because he goes, like Paul said, he goes for the axe, but then he goes for another one. Like, he doesn't follow it up with a pin. And then when eventually he does go for the pin,
he's on his stomach, get to roll him over. But he spends so much time rolling Nick over that gives him enough time to kind of catch himself, and he's able to kick out. And damn it.
I mean, Bach was out 100%. That would have been the finish of the match if Bach would have fallen on his back.
And I love this because then Curt just starts ramming Nick's head into the turnbuckle. I'm like, knock him out. You got to pin him.
What I love about that moment is the crowd was so hype. Hennig was so hype. And I know Gary must have been hype because even though Bach was on his stomach, he goes down and counts one. And he's like, oh, wait a minute. No, his shoulders aren't down.
You got to roll him over. And then as this is going on, 2 minutes remaining. And then you could see Curt getting desperate, kind of going, okay, I've got to put him away. So he goes for a big old brain buster. But that doesn't do it. And then you can even hear the commentary going, this pace is getting frantic now.
In the closing moments of this match, I found myself screaming at my computer screen.
It's oh, God.
And I was mainly screaming at Gary because the counts seemed to get slower as the match went on. And
Isn't that how it happens?
Come on, Gary.
That's totally how it happens.
Were they getting slower, or were you just getting so pulled into the match that time was slowing down?
Can it be both?
It could be both. And so, that pace is getting frantic. And we get a 1 minute remaining. And then Curt locks in the figure 4. And there's no way Nick can hold on for a minute.
He's writhing in pain.
He is screaming.
He grabs onto the referee.
Yeah, I think at one point he grabs onto him, and I'm like, he does that so he doesn't tap out. Like, surely he thinks if I grab Gary and pull him down, I'll get disqualified, and I keep my belt.
Meanwhile, on commentary, while you've got Hennig and Bockwinkel yelling at each other in the middle of this figure four, they're both bleeding all over the place. Commentary says, "I will never forget it as long as I live." This finish that we're watching.
30 seconds remaining, and it's like that's when he grabs Gary's hands.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, come on, you're gonna tap out. 10, 9, 8, and the crowd starts chanting at around 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and then the hold literally is broken right at 1 because Curt thought that Nick submitted.
Well, the bell rings here. That's what happens.
Bing,
the bell
ding,
rings.
ding, ding, ding.
Everyone is looking to Gary. Nobody knows what the call is. Did Bach submit? The ref goes over to Curt and raises his hand. So
they come unglued.
So Curt turns to the crowd to cheer, starts celebrating, and while his back is turned, Gary raises Bach's arm, indicating a draw.
Yeah, and that's when you hear Trongar going, "Oh no, the time limit elapsed. We have a draw," which means that Nick Bockwinkel is still the AWA champion. He says it like he's so disappointed.
And just all of the breath comes out of me, of Gary, of Curt.
And all of the fans at the Showboat Pavilion.
I mean, Curt goes over to the announcers after he finds out the actual call, and he screams at them, "I'm just getting my breath. You understand me?" Like, Curt Hennig's journey to the AWA World Championship is not over.
Because these two go on to have like a trilogy of matches. And each one, the story being told is Curt just can't quite put Bach away. And the last match they had together, you and I watched together, Spencer. We were like, oh, man, this match is great. And then we saw the ending.
Yeah, I think this sort of speaks to this overarching story that these two guys are telling. You can kind of see as Bockwinkel is desperately trying to hold on. You know, is he holding on to the title or his career, right? With being 51 years old as this new up-and-comer is coming at him. And on the opposite side, Curt Hennig, it's not if, but when.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does that say? That he was holding on to his career, but he wasn't able to necessarily get the win over the up-and-coming star.
I just, it's some great storytelling, and I know that, like you were saying earlier, I'm pretty sure the minute somebody finds, oh, it's a 60-minute time limit draw, I'm not watching that. No, go out of your way to watch it. This is a fantastic story they tell, and yes, it's an older, kind of slower-paced wrestling match, but if you can kind of get past the pacing and just watch it, it's worth it.
It's worth a revisit
for
sure. If you call yourself a wrestling fan, there are lots of different types of wrestling, right? And this is just one of those old school Olympic style wrestling matches.
Well, and this is going to be interesting when we rank here in just a few minutes.
It definitely
because if you remember when we ranked War Games, Landon, you said this is not what I come to wrestling for.
Correct.
And so maybe this is what you come to wrestling for, right?
More so, I would say.
More than likely. So if that's the case, how will that play into your initial ranking? So I think that's really, really interesting. But before we get there, we have to do favorite moments. And I think Paul waited till the end.
Yeah.
Because he didn't even think about what his favorite moment was.
Yeah, I did. Oh, no, my favorite moment, I kind of stuck him in, so.
Okay. So my favorite moment of this match is the ending. It's. Yeah. I mean, how could it not be? It's Gary sitting right there looking at both of them wondering, okay, I don't even know what's going to happen. And then the total, the unsure moment where Gary raises Curt Hennig's arm.
Yeah, because he's like, I don't know what to do.
So much tension. And then Curt Hennig turning his back and cheering to the crowd. But then,
I think my
so
favorite moment is not having Larry Zbyszko hand Curt a roll of quarters.
Yeah.
Well, your favorite moment can't be something that didn't happen.
Well, no, we watched a rematch of theirs where that's how the match ends.
Yeah, because what Hennig ends up winning the AWA championship by turning heel.
Yeah, and then the title is vacated.
Yeah,
which is an interesting way to go about it.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Interesting. That's
it's
the word.
Interesting in 1987, and it's not interesting now because that happens a lot.
Yeah, I think my favorite moment. You can't ignore the ending, right? It's the best part.
Oh, it's great.
add-on commentary, like towards the end, Bockwinkel is trying desperately to win before he gets put into that figure 4, and the commentary team says Nick Bockwinkel is a man of 1,000 holds, and he's used about 999 of them. It's just, add that on the drama in the last 5 minutes, and then the drama after the match. Landon, to your point, that really adds on to things.
Yeah, because when Curt finds out he didn't win, he just looks heartbroken, and I'm like, some really good acting by both men.
Yeah, the image, the closing images that you see of Hennig, Bockwinkel bleeding in that figure 4. I mean, it's reminiscent of some of our most iconic moments in the history of professional wrestling. Obviously,
I think so.
Austin in the Sharpshooter is the first that comes to mind, but it's that same type of moment, right, where you are just giving all you have to try to win the match. And, I'm not a fan of 60-minute time limit draws.
I'm not either, but I really enjoyed watching this match. The first time I watched it, I'm like, that's it?
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like 60 minutes.
This, no doubt, is one of the greatest wrestling matches of all time.
So I guess that means we have to rank this mother. And I know we like to trade off who goes first, but there's one point about this match I want to make.
Go first, Paul. Go ahead.
So there were 2 matches that I thought of. Really 3, but I'm not going to count one of them because I only thought of it because other time limit draws we have. So, I thought of Samoa Joe and CM Punk, but this is a very, very different match. That one felt like an hour long. This one did not. And it's interesting because it's a much slower pace. It's a much slower, more story-driven match than it is like an athletic contest. So the other 2 matches that it really invoked out of me, the first one it invoked for me was the Shawn Michaels, John Cena Monday Night Raw match. But I thought they told a very different story than those 2. The other match that it invoked out of me was the Ric Flair-Ricky Steamboat match. Because I felt like this is a similar time, that's a couple of years later, but it's a similar story being told where it's the old guard versus the new guard, which is funny because I think Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat were about the same age. They were both in their late 30s, and they had that match. But the story they were telling is Ric Flair represents the 70s. Ricky Steamboat represents the 80s, and now we're going to have this big clash going into the 90s. And I felt like they were telling a similar story here. And I don't know if I would put this one as high as that one, but another part of me kind of wants to. So it's one of those, like, where do you put this one?
Does it break the top 10 for you?
I don't know. That's the hard part. It's a very, very hard discussion to have.
Well, let's see what Spencer thinks.
I would definitely put it above Samoa Joe and CM Punk.
Okay.
So it's at least going to be...
So if you're looking at the other Broadway we have, it's better than that.
I enjoyed it a lot more. So it's definitely top 13 for me. I just don't know if I break top 10. It's a really hard, because, God damn it, this is hard to do.
It is hard.
So I'll tell you what. I actually start at number 26. That's where I start in looking at the list. That match is Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker.
Oh, man.
And the reason why I feel like the endings kind of compare.
They mirror each other.
Kurt Angle, Undertaker, it's just like they were out of things to give, right? Like they just totally spent all they had. And that's exactly what happens in this Hennig-Bockwinkel match. So that's where I start initially. And I kind of actually put a ceiling on this at 14. So like that John Cena, Shawn Michaels
right where
range.
I'm at.
That's where my ceiling is. So for me, if I'm going to give myself a range to start with the ranking as I was breaking this down, I'm ranking it somewhere between 15 and 25. That's where I'm at. I'm not quite top 10.
So you're just literally one match behind where I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just I think this deserves to be in the top half. The fact that it's a time limit draw doesn't hurt it as much as it normally would because the finish was so good, especially with the raising of the hand afterwards, right? But I do think, and I said this right after I watched it, the same story could have been told in 20 or 30 minutes less.
I think so, but I think the style they were doing, I think you need that amount of time to build. And I understand what you mean, because I felt like this match would have been perfect if it was 30 minutes.
Yeah,
imagine if you can trim it down, because they can tell that same story in half the time, just because they can cut out some of the rest holds and do more quicker transitions, which could have very easily been done. But I think it would lose a little bit if they did that.
I think that's an interesting point, Landon. I'm curious to see where you fall right now.
So this match, whenever I go to rank it, reminds me of the Royal Rumble. So Royal Rumble 1992 is my starting point, and just thinking about the incredible athleticism, conditioning it takes to be in there for an hour, like Ric Flair did, and maintain the quality that they were able to. So I started there. Looking at the top 30, I see this match as definitely being an inspiration for probably more people than any other match on our list.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I were looking at wrestling clinics, I would have to go up the list, and the one that I would stop on and really have to consider real hard that this might pass up is Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not sure that this match is as on point as what they were able to do.
Okay.
So, Angle Benoit doesn't end in a draw. And for me, that's why it edges out at nearly the halfway point. I would put it right there, Spencer, at 25.
At 25? Okay.
I like it. I'm totally good with that. Paul, how are you feeling?
Honestly, when you start talking about putting it in that, because you were talking about putting that exact same range, because we were both like, I don't know. We were both kind of like, I'm thinking right around here, but I don't want to go higher than that, but I can be easily talked into going lower than that. So 25, I think, is a fantastic spot for this match.
And Spencer, that was your low range.
Yeah. I'm comfortable with it, though.
I am too.
Because you kind of for the reasons that I said, right? Like the fact that it is a time limit draw, is fine, really, in the grand scheme of things. But the fact of the matter is, this is a match from 1986, which doesn't take away anything from it automatically, but it does move a little slower. And so when I said that this match could have been done in 20 or 30 minutes less, you know who does that in 20 or 30 minutes less? Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit.
Yeah.
And it's a definitive decision. It's a really good finish too. So
But I really loved your comparison to The Undertaker and Kurt Angle. I think that's an on-point comparison to this finish.
And so it feels very appropriate that it's going sort of right in the middle of those. So we'll put it above Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels, but just below Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. So that means Nick Bockwinkel versus Curt Hennig from November 1986 for the AWA World Heavyweight Championship is the 25th greatest wrestling match of all time.
Out of 54.
Right.
Yeah. Top half.
I just had a ton of fun breaking that down with you guys.
I did too.
Man, I implore you guys listening, if you have not seen this, and I know a lot of you because we interact with you, I know a lot of you really enjoy that intelligent wrestling, and I really think that this is one that will quickly become one of your favorites.
Yeah, I've stumbled across this match after we started this podcast, and it was pretty early on, and I knew after I saw it, this is going on the list, without a doubt.
Yeah, it was one of those, we put it on a couple polls, but this is not the type of match that's going to win a poll.
No.
Correct, right? No. One, because it's not incredibly well known. Two, it's hard if you're going to put this up against Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Bad Blood. You know what I mean?
But it has some very vocal fans,
for sure.
and a lot of people. We've gotten some criticism. I'll just be extremely transparent. We've gotten some criticism for mainly doing 90s or newer stuff. And so we're really trying to broaden our horizons. And so we've had some very vocal minority folks who implored us to look at matches like this. And whenever I did, I found that these matches get like 5 stars, from all of these fantastic viewers from all around the world. People just don't. I mean, they didn't have a lot of attention back in the day, and therefore people don't necessarily go back and watch it if they weren't watching it at the time.
I think
this is one of those matches that I agree with Spencer. If you haven't seen it,
watch
do
it.
yourself a favor and go watch it.
Yeah, I think the average ranking of this match is like a 4.75.
Yeah, it's really, really good. This now becomes our 5th match out of 54 so far. That's prior to 1990, which is pretty good, I think. And I'm excited to see what else we add.
I'm liking getting these older matches.
Yeah.
I really, really like that.
And guys, believe it or not, we only have 6 episodes left in season 3. So we are inching our way towards our season 3 finale, which is going to be a phenomenal match.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, you're not ready. I'm not ready.
None of us are ready. And I got to say, I feel like season 3 has been the most diverse season.
Well, it's been, and I think that's been something that we've done intentionally, and it's been a lot of fun, and really a lot of the credit goes to the voters on Twitter our patrons for voting these diverse matches as the winners of the polls. So all the credit to you guys for sure for that.
Well, and I hope that we could be a platform to not only just show us matches, but to then be able to let people see, hey, there are matches where you can fall on gummy bears and thumbtacks.
Right. And if we can broaden your horizons in that way, then we're absolutely doing something that's completely worth it. And to your point, Paul, I'm super, super pumped to see where we go for the rest of season 3 and beyond. If you have additional match suggestions, totally reach out to us on Twitter, on Facebook at Last Match Cast. You can email us at lastmatchstanding@gmail.com. Obviously, you can comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Right, wherever you can, let us know what your match suggestions are because we are here to watch them. And until episode 55, I'm Spencer.
I'm Paul.
I'm Landon.
And this is Last Match Standing.